The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hey everybody, this is Terry. We're going to start the program here in about 4 or 5 minutes. We're going to give a couple minutes extra for people to log on. So we'll be right back and get started here in about 5. Hey everybody, this is Terry Yuede with the Yuede Team. We want to welcome you guys to our webinar. We're super excited tonight to have Kaaren Hall. She's with, the name of her company is uDirect IRA Services. And Kaaren specializes in helping people invest within a self-directed IRA. And, you know, this is something that we found to be extremely interesting and helpful. Really something that we haven't heard a lot about from, you know, in our career so far. I really didn't even know that this was really possible until I was able to hear Kaaren speak.
Yeah, we listened to Kaaren give a presentation back in, October, at a bus tour that we did with Distressed Property Wholesale, which they're a group that is buying some homes in St. Louis and they're rehabbing them and they're turning them as turnkey investments to local people and to out-of-state buyers. But anyways, Karen's presentation was fantastic. And, you know, I've never had my financial planner tell me anything like this. So it was all brand new information for me, and we thought, it was something that we definitely would want to talk about and share.
Just to get in a little bit about the Yuede team, because we do have some newer people on the broadcast tonight, give you a little bit of background about us. We actually do work as a family. We've been with Coldwell Banker I've been with them for about 11 years now. So I've been operating in St. Louis, St. Charles markets. We live in St. Charles, but we do a lot of sales, and we own investment property in St. Louis County. The Yuede team has been recognized 3 years in a row by the Wall Street Journal and the top 100 real estate teams in the country, which is something that we're proud of. And we've also ranked as a #1 team in buyer represented transactions for 5 years in a row. And that's nationwide for all of Coldwell Banker. So
yeah, I guess to make a long story short, we've been in the business now 11 years, and we've been specializing and working with investors on investment property acquisitions pretty much most of our career, all of our career. We got into it real early. The first couple of years we were doing this. We've been involved with some education groups that some of them have been really good. Some of them have been terrible. And something that we try to do in our business is we try to find real-world information that we can put out there in these types of forums, because if people are interested in buying investment property, you really need to be taught the right way to do it, what you can and can't do in a real world, what you need to do to make your investments work, and you really want to stay away from the really fancy systems. You're going to make all this money overnight, slick, crazy stuff that doesn't work. So we're continually trying to put real information out there. So again, thanks everybody for taking the time to listen.
Another thing that we've seen in our years in real estate is we've really seen the ups and downs of the real estate market. Whenever I first got my license, it was literally like we put a sign in a yard and we would just wait for contracts. And things have drastically changed with the subprime crash, the mortgage meltdown, everything that's happened really since 2008. It's really changed the market and made it much, much more friendly for investors. So we really feel like right now it's just an awesome time to buy investment property in St. Louis specifically. And we're going to talk a little bit about the market on a whole. We're going to talk about Missouri, and then we're going to kind of focus on the St. Louis market a little bit.
That's something that I've been saying to people now for the last couple years even, is that if you have the opportunity to buy investment property and you have the resources and you can do it and you can make it work, you're really crazy if you don't. So that's our little spiel. We're going to get right into the material tonight because we do have quite a bit of material to cover, and we definitely want to give Kaaren plenty of time to get through her stuff. Again, it's fabulous information. So we're going to start off here with a quick market watch.
Just a little bit of house cleaning real quick. I wanted to invite anybody out there listening tonight. You can actually ask questions right on the panel that you should have on your computer, the GoToWebinar panel. If you go to the chat room, you can ask a question. If that doesn't work, you can email questions to Yuede, that's TYUEDE @gmail.com. So either way, we'd love to field some of your questions. I know Kaaren would as well. If you have questions about her material, please go ahead and ask us. So getting right into the U.S. market watch. U.S. foreclosure activity hits a 7-month high in October. And the reason for this, the article that we read was provided by Realty Track, was all the defaults, again, these key states, California, Florida, Michigan, hit highs of, I think it's 7 months or more. Of 12 months or more.
This is really the reason that we're seeing a lot of the foreclosure activity pick up now is because, and I'm sure a lot of people are aware of this, but there was actually a second foreclosure moratorium. And it was nationwide, and the reason that the moratorium was put into place was because of the robo-signing mess. And robo-signing, we've been talking about this for a year now. At this point, it's nothing new, but it was a deal where a lot of the way that these foreclosures were processed in a lot of these states, it wasn't done properly. They were basically the big foreclosure servicing companies set up foreclosure mills, quote unquote, where they were slamming through as many foreclosures as they possibly could, sometimes like 1,000 a day in one office. And come to find out, a lot of the foreclosures they slammed through these foreclosure mills were not done properly, and so it caused a big mess where they had to go back and redo a lot of these foreclosures, and that's part of the reason for the second moratorium. One of the questions that I constantly get asked by my clients is, when's the foreclosures, when's the market going to dry up, when are the inventory levels are going to start to shrink, and really that's almost like the big elephant in the room. From what we see and what we understand, it doesn't look like the inventory levels are going to slow down anytime soon because of the moratorium last year, because of the first moratorium that was put into place back in 2008, right after the downturn. It really seemed that filing these foreclosures got put on hold almost, and that they kind of, the big banks and the big servicing companies kind of kicked the can down the road, so to speak. And now at this point, it's almost like the high number of foreclosures is part blessing, part problem for them, because they probably should have been getting through a lot of inventory over the past couple of years.
And we're seeing that with the data. 77,733 default notices were filed in the U.S. during October, during 1 month. That's a 10% increase from September. Good news is that it is down 23% from last year, and that's provided by Realty Track as well. Foreclosure inventories reached a record high during October and now represent 4.29% of all active mortgages. So that's a pretty staggering statistic right there.
No doubt.
And then we want to focus again a little bit on Missouri. Missouri foreclosure activity down in the third quarter, with 6,906 Missouri properties during the third quarter in 2011. So, one thing that we talk about, and we've been reading about it an awful lot, is the fact that a lot of economists are thinking that the recovery is going to be more of a regional thing, more of localized into specific markets, states, towns, counties, whatever. Where you have some of these states, big states, California, Florida, that nationally might be really dragging the market down, but then you have, a state like Missouri or a market like St. Louis that really potentially might have a chance to recover a lot quicker than some of those markets.
It's just something that's very interesting when looking back at the housing downturn, is that the crash was something that did happen coast to coast. It was something that happened throughout the whole country, kind of all at once, and definitely right where what the economists are saying now is that, and some of these markets have already started to recover. D.C. Supposedly is doing really well. Texas has already started a recovery. We think that St. Louis, although our numbers and our data really kind of mirror the national numbers, which is kind of weird, and that's kind of the way it's been along the way, we think that our market is poised to recover a lot quicker than some of the other markets because of where we're located in the country, because we're on two rivers, because we have a chance for a lot of logistics coming in and out of the area, and some other factors.
So getting right into the St. Louis area, St. Louis ranked number 2 on 7 highest performing major housing markets. St. Louis recorded a 2.2% increase in quarter-to-quarter home prices, which is great news for our area. That's by Clear Capital Reports. St. Louis named number 8 best city for home buyers, according to Fortune magazine, and that particular ranking had to do with affordability. So we have great affordability in St. Louis. The prices are very attractive, not only for home buyers, but even more importantly for us, for investors.
Absolutely, and I guess picture that with the rents remaining high and probably even bumped up some. That's why we're so excited about teaching people to be landlords right now.
Interesting that the rent, through all this, through the subprime mess and everything, the rents didn't even go down at all.
Right.
That's really a neat thing to think about if you're interested, if you are a landlord, or if you're interested in becoming a landlord. This was just something that we found interesting. Was from the National Association of Home Builders. The implication of higher commodity prices for home builders is apparent, as this inflation represents a rise in the total cost of materials and energy which are required to construct a new home. Gas, wood, copper, even primary ingredients for house paint have all seen spikes in price since January 2010. So what that means to us is, rough time for builders, right?
Rough time for builders, and then you can also compare this to buying a distressed home right now, where you're buying a property at a rock bottom price, and the idea is that you're buying a property that already has these commodities included into it. It already has copper, wood, the construction of the house. You're buying these commodities almost at a rock bottom price. So it's kind of a neat way of thinking about it, and definitely something that would make a property investor excited.
U.S. apartment vacancies fall, rents edge up. Again, this goes into right what we're talking about. Increased employment, especially for 20 to 34-year-olds, spurring a demand for housing. New renters plowed into an apartment market where supply grew by only 44,000 units, and that's a national number. So only 44,000 new units as far as apartment complexes.
And this is something that we've looked at, and we've done a little bit of studies on generations. It's something that's always interesting to us. We're Generation Xers. The generation behind us is millennials, and some of you guys have probably already read some stuff or seen some stuff on these millennials. But one of the things that makes it so interesting to us as we're in real estate is that the generation behind us, the millennials, is actually 50% larger than our generation, the Xers. They're basically, the millennials are the baby boomers' kids, more or less. So you have a lot of these 20-something-year-old people. There's a lot more of them now than there was whenever we were in our 20s, obviously, in the country. But you have a lot of these people that are graduating from school. They're starting to enter the job market. They're looking for places to live. They're looking for places to buy. And we think just by the numbers alone that that generation really could be a big part of our recovery.
Particularly for the existing housing market.
Particularly for the existing house market and the rental market, too.
And even more importantly, this next statistic about new construction, just over 6,000 units was about a quarter of normal for first quarter in recent years. It says if such an imbalance persists, it could make it easier for landlords to raise rents.
You like that?
Yes, that's good news for us. So 6,000 units, and that's in one quarter. This was Q1 2011.
Wow,
unbelievable.
Okay, getting into some of these questions. Kaaren, are you okay? Can you hear us all right?
Yeah, I hear you guys great. It's
Awesome.
Great information.
Awesome. Well, hey, we're super excited to have you. Thank you so much for taking the time to be with us today. I'm sure you're going to knock everybody's socks off as usual. But we're getting this meeting set up with Kaaren, and we wrote some questions, and these are questions from us. So these are more questions on a layman's terms to ask the expert. So we're going to get into this, Kaaren, with the first question. Very simple. How do you buy real estate in an IRA, and does the contract have to be written on a specific contract?
Sure, I'll be happy to answer this. And by the way, as we go forward, I'll be able to get more in depth on this question and really elaborate. But the way that you buy real estate with an IRA is to open the IRA, get it funded, and then what you do is you don't have to have a specific real purchase contract, but there has to be special writing on it. Or in other words, the name of the buyer isn't going to be Terry Yuede. It'll be the custodian for the benefit of Terry Yude's IRA is how that's written.
Excellent, excellent. What is the difference between a typical IRA and a self-directed IRA?
Yeah, great question. People will say, hey, I want to have a self-directed IRA, and I'll say, well, do you have a traditional or a Roth? They go, they say, oh, well, I want a self-directed IRA. So a typical IRA is the kind of IRA that you can only invest in the stock market, in stocks, bonds, and mutual funds. The only difference between a typical IRA and a self-directed IRA is the asset that the plan can buy. So when you're getting into a self-directed IRA, it means you're opening up the whole world of investment opportunities, including real estate, whether it's single-family homes, commercial, multi-unit buildings, making notes on real estate, buying tax liens, buying undeveloped land. So really the only difference between typical and self-directed is the asset that the plan can buy.
But that's the biggie, obviously. I mean, that's something that really interested us being involved in real estate investing, is that these assets can actually be held in your IRA. What are the tax implications of buying and selling assets within an IRA?
Yeah, the great thing is that there are none. When your IRA purchases an asset, any proceeds that flow back into the IRA, tax-free or tax-deferred, tax-free in a Roth, you don't pay tax immediately on something like a traditional IRA or a SEP IRA. The tax is deferred until you actually take a withdrawal, and then you pay the tax typically at your normal income tax rate.
Fantastic. This next question was one that actually one of the guys in the office asked me. He was interested in hopefully listening tonight because, these days a lot of people, they need income. So can you realize profit of cash flow or proceeds from a sale?
You really can't. I mean, the purposes of an IRA, the purpose is that the money is for retirement. And so it's not for present benefit, it's for long-term benefit. That's why if you take your money out, if you take a withdrawal before you're 59 and a half, the withdrawal is subject to penalties and, of course, tax. So basically, you're not going to be living off of the cash flow from a property that your IRA owns unless you're retirement age.
Excellent, excellent. What are the short-term and long-term benefits of investing in an IRA?
Yeah, well, the point of an IRA really is long-term benefit. I think the short-term benefit would be this, that, say, for example, you buy a house and it's $100,000. And you sell it, and when you sell it in years from now, it's $200,000. Wow, okay, you made a $100,000 profit. That's great. And so what happens is you sell the property, $200,000 goes back into your IRA. Now what you can do is take that entire $200,000 and put it into your next deal. It's not like it's been diminished by tax, so it's not like you just get $150,000 back to invest because the rest went out in tax. You compound faster. So I'd say that the short-term benefit would be the compounding of your investments because the proceeds aren't diminished by tax. But an IRA really is for long-term investing.
Great. Yeah, that's really killer to be able to make that money and not have to pay the taxes on it. I think that's really key. Obviously that's gets us into our next question about the short-term and long-term tax implications. Is there anything else you want to add to that, Kaaren?
No, I mean, really, the nice thing about the self-directed IRA is that you're not paying these kinds of taxes. You're not paying capital gains, and there are some new taxes coming out at the beginning of 2013 that have to do with passive and active income, and the IRA won't be subject to those taxes. So really, when you're investing with the self-directed IRA, I think in a lot of ways you're saving tax. I mean, you're not taking the write-offs that you normally would when you own real estate outside the IRA. You're not getting to take that immediate write-off, but you've got the long-term benefit.
And some of those write-offs, especially in our market, have shrunk way down just because the properties are so cheap. No doubt about it. This last question was something that we thought about, and obviously this is something that's specific to real estate because you may have someone living in your property, or there's liability issues if someone's working on that property, that type of thing. What type of asset protection is needed for a self-directed IRA?
Well, I think rather than I'm not an advisor, I'm not an attorney or a CPA, and I'm not really here to give tax and legal advice. So that said, I'll just say that when it comes to asset protection, you decide what you need, but what type is available is probably a better question. If you have a retirement plan that's called an ERISA plan, it's an employer plan. It's not the kind of self-directed IRA that we provide. It would be the kind of plan where you've got employees, lots of W-2, or at least a few W-2 employees. That kind of a plan has ERISA protection. We call it the OJ clause. You know how O.J. Simpson was convicted, but he still got to live off of his NFL pension, and that's because his ERISA pension had protection from creditors, but an IRA doesn't have that kind of protection. So typically what my clients do when they're looking for asset protection is they go with what's called the checkbook IRA, which is kind of a misnomer. It's the nickname for what it really is. It's really an IRA-owned LLC, and in my presentation as we go forward, I'll be talking more about what that is and how to use it. So it's a special purpose LLC, and it's a tool that you can use that can give you some asset protection.
Fantastic, fantastic. Well, no doubt, you're able to fly through these questions. Thanks for taking the time to answer these for us, Kaaren. Right now, we're going to go ahead and turn the presentation over to you. Everybody keep in mind, I don't think we've had any questions yet, but if anybody has any questions, don't be shy. Just type them in on the chat.
Very good. And so as I was mentioning, uDirect IRA Services, we are a third-party administrator. And what we do is we provide the self-directed IRA shell that you need to be able to self-direct. So in order to self-direct, it's not something that you're going to be able to do with, say, a Smith Barney or a Merrill Lynch. If you call them and you say that you want to self-direct your IRA, or you call them and say, hi, I want to buy some real estate with my IRA, they don't tell you that they can't help you. They tell you typically that you can't do it. Wow. But you can, and so, I mean, call them and ask, and that's what they're going to say. So we're here to help you self-direct your IRA. Now, if you need tax advice or legal advice, have a great tax advisor on your side, have a great attorney on your side. You're going to need them anyway, for contracts and tax advice. So make sure you've got a good team. Now, a lot of people haven't even heard about self-directed IRA investing, and I find this all the time, and I love it in a way because, it's like I'm telling this message to people, but what they don't realize is you've been able to do this for 36 years. You've been able to self-direct. Crazy, right? That something you've been able to do for 36 years and people don't even really even know it. Best kept secret, I call it, but a lot of attorneys and CPAs don't even know it. I still have CPAs telling their clients, oh, no, you can't do that. It's not allowed. Well, it is allowed, and we'll talk about that as we go forward. So as we mentioned earlier, the only difference between a self-directed IRA and a typical IRA is the asset that the plan holds. I mean, the rules about how the money goes in, those rules are the same. The rules about how the money comes out, those rules are the same. Just what the plan can invest in, that's the difference. So an IRA is investing in things like rental property and all the things I mentioned, even mango trees. You can buy precious metals. You can make notes. You can buy all kinds of things with your self-directed IRA as long as it's for investment purposes only, So the limits. The IRS doesn't tell us what we can invest our IRA in. They only have a list of what you can't invest in, and it's a short list. Two things. It's life insurance contracts and collectibles. Everything else is allowed. So your IRA can definitely invest in all the things that I mentioned, but not a life insurance contract, not a fine wine collection, not an art collection, not certain collectible coins and things. So just keep in mind that those things are not allowed, but everything else is fair game. If you can invest in it, your IRA can buy it. Now, this is something that comes up at least once a week for us, and that is that somebody wants to self-direct their IRA, but their money, their retirement money, is with their current employer. So if your retirement money, if you're in the situation, your retirement money is in a 401k with your current employer, chances are you probably will not be allowed to self-direct that money because it's held by your plan administrator. So typically you have to wait till you leave the company before you can roll that over, but there is one chance that you have, and that's to get what's called an in-service transfer. And so what that means is you go to your plan administrator, and then you ask for this in-service transfer, and either they allow it or they don't. If they're going to allow it, it's typically because you're over 59 and a half. That's usually the reason that they would allow that. So here we go. The rule book on IRAs is really the Internal Revenue Code, but it's sort of distilled into these publications. And IRS Publication 590, and by the way, if you want to read that, you can go to irs.gov, and in the browser bar there, type Pub 590, and it'll come up, and you can read all about it. That's where they talk about the rules. So we're going to talk a little bit about the rules, because if you understand this, if you understand these rules, then you're going to have a very good experience self-directing. If you don't understand these rules, then it's not going to make any sense to you, because a lot of these rules are not intuitive. So basically, here they are. When you have an IRA, understand it's not a 401k, it's an IRA, an individual retirement arrangement here. You're not going to be borrowing money from it. You can't sell any property to it that you personally own. You don't use it as security for a loan, and you don't use it to buy property for personal use, either present or future.
Hey, Kaaren,
Some of the yeah.
I had a question for you. Can you, if you already own a property, can you deed a property into your IRA after you already own it?
Yeah, you really can't. And the
Okay.
reason that you can't is because, as it says here, that you're not allowed to sell property to your IRA that you personally own.
Okay.
They would consider that self-dealing, and it would be a prohibited transaction.
Okay.
But it's a question I get asked all the time.
Oh, I'm sure.
So when we talk about who's allowed and who's disallowed, this is very, very important. So if your IRA is going to buy, we'll say houses today, if your IRA is going to buy real estate, it's going to buy a house, certain people are qualified and disqualified. So, for example, disqualified people are going to be your lineal ascendants and descendants, your parents, your grandparents and their spouses, you and your spouse, your kids, your grandkids and their spouses, your lineal ascendants and descendants, and any fiduciary to the plan is disqualified. But the qualified people are the people out here to the sides, like your aunts and uncles, your cousins, your brothers and sisters, and your nieces and nephews. All right? So qualified, disqualified. Doesn't mean family members are disqualified. It means lineal ascendants and descendants are disqualified. So here they are, the prohibited transactions. And they break down into these 3 categories, really. Number 1 is that neither you nor a disqualified person can have benefit from the IRA. That means present benefit. It means indirect benefit. The only benefit you're supposed to have from the IRA is retirement benefit, money for retirement. So, for example, I had a gentleman walk in the office. He's an appraiser and just so excited to make a note with his IRA. He just opened the self-directed IRA. Money showed up, and he comes in my office with his note and puts it on my desk, and he says, okay, how do I fill it out? so my first thing to him was, all right, well, you have a note. This is your investment, and you don't understand it. So that's a problem. So I introduced him to an attorney who wrote a proper note for his situation, and it was something that he understood. It wasn't just something he printed off the Internet. But I said, okay, well, you're going to lend this money, but who are you going to lend it to? And he said, well, I'm going to lend this money to my sister. All right, well, sister is one of the people out to the side. You know, she's allowed. So I said, great. Or actually, sister-in-law it was, and that's fine. And I said, and I just happened to ask. I said, all right, well, that's fine. But when your sister-in-law gets the money, what is she going to do with it? He says, oh, well, she's going to invest in my business. And so I kind of had to put the stop on that. I definitely had to put the stop on that because the IRS has something called the indirect rule. You can't benefit from your IRA money. So if the money starts in your IRA and ends up in your business, that is present benefit. So it doesn't matter how many entities or individuals it passes through. It starts in your IRA. If it ends in your business, that's benefit, and they'll consider that a prohibited transaction, and you can get slammed with taxes and penalties. So keep in mind that basically, you know, with a retirement account, you get all your benefit at retirement, not right now. All right, number 2 is that you can't buy, sell, or exchange property between the plan and yourself or any other disqualified person. So just like you were asking me, you know, can my IRA buy property that I own myself? No, and this is the reason. Because this is a prohibited transaction. You can't buy, sell, or exchange property with yourself, you know, between you and your IRA, because the IRS considers that to be benefit, actually. Now, the third thing here, a lot of people really get hung up in this, and this is probably the most common, you know, genre of prohibited transactions, and that is that somebody who's disqualified can't provide goods, services, or facilities to the plan. So here's what that means. Say your IRA owns this house, and the lawn needs to be mowed, and your son, you know, has a lawnmower, and you say, well, okay, go over and mow the lawn. Well, that's a prohibited transaction. Your son is a lineal descendant. He's disallowed. He cannot provide services to your IRA. All right? The same thing, you're disallowed to your IRA, so you're not going to go in there and swing the hammers and, you know, and paint the walls. You're not going to be doing those things because you can't provide any services to the IRA. And if you're a realtor, say, for example, your mom wants to take her IRA and buy a house, you can't provide your professional real estate services to her to help her. You have, it's one of those things where you know, you've got that buddy in the office where you always trade things off. Well, I mean, you know, Keith and Terry, you guys can't do that since you're brothers if it was your mom's IRA, but you pass it off to somebody else and let them handle it because you're disallowed, and you certainly couldn't take a commission if it was your mother's IRA. That would be disallowed. So just remember, keep everything arm's length. All right. And so now we've talked about the rules, and that gives you a basic overview. So here is an overview of how it works. You are one entity, and your IRA is a separate entity. So when you go to invest, the name of the investor is not, you know, like I was saying before, Terry Yuede. It's custodian for the benefit of Terry Yuede's IRA. That's kind of a long name, but that's the name of the buyer. And then we sign the documentation as the, you know, as on behalf of the IRA. So uDirect IRA Services, we come into play as the TPA, the third-party administrator, and we utilize the trust services of a trust company that holds the money, American Estate and Trust, and that's how it works. uDirect IRA Services, we're your point of contact from beginning to end. Okay, so how do you get real estate in an IRA? We're going to cover that, but let's talk about the pros and cons. The upside, I think, to using a self-directed IRA to buy real estate is that you probably already have the retirement money. It's sitting somewhere, and you want to put it to the highest and best use. And if you are already familiar with the asset of, say, real estate, then perhaps it makes the most sense to take control and invest in what you know best. And if that's real estate, then that's great. Capital gains, any positive cash flow is tax-free or tax-deferred. I mean, it's not taxed now. It's not taxed till you withdraw it. No time limit for holding the property. So if you've ever done a 1031 exchange, you know how you have to identify the property and close on it, and the clock is ticking. That doesn't happen in an IRA. Your IRA can buy a house today, sell it tomorrow, and there's no particular tax ramification at all. The IRA can actually borrow money, and we'll talk about that. And we already discussed how you can earn a larger rate of return because your return isn't being diminished by tax. Now, the downside to owning real estate with your IRA is that when you own real estate, with your own personal money, you don't have to. You get to take these tax write-offs. You get to write off depreciation. You get to write off your expenses and so forth. But when your IRA owns real estate, you're not taking those deductions. You're not getting benefit today from owning real estate in your IRA. The benefit you get when you retire. And also, you can't replace the losses very easily. If you do lose money, you're limited to how much you can replace in your IRA by contribution limits. So that's kind of the downside. All right, so I mentioned that your IRA can borrow money, and when I found this out, I was really surprised, having been in the lending industry. This loan is not made to you. It's made to your IRA, and it's a non-recourse loan, so that means that if you default, the lender can only come against the subject property, okay, not against you and not against any other asset that your IRA owns. So the loan is made based really on the property, its location and its condition and so forth. Not a lot of lenders to choose from, but I do have a short list, and if anyone listening would like that list, I'd be happy to email it to you. Just send me an email.
But this is nothing like a conventional loan, right? This is more.
Oh, no. It's not. It's like a commercial loan.
But what are the typical LTVs on those loans, Kaaren?
Yeah, larger down payments required probably, it says here 40 to 45%, but it can go to 50 or 60%. It depends on the property. It's, its location, its condition, what are the risk factors.
And not to put you on the spot, but what are the terms typically like?
Typically the rates are higher than you're going to see because, number one, you're talking about a non-owner-occupied property to begin with, and then you add the non-recourse factor. But to mitigate that risk, you're also talking about a property that's got a 50% down payment, and before they're going to make the loan, they're going to look for certain reserves in your IRA, and it's an IRA that owns it. So it's, and they're not going to make the loan unless the cash flow makes sense.
That's really cool. Yes, it is. I think maybe somebody that has a really good equity position in a property could take advantage of that.
Yeah, if you put 50% down, you walk in with a great equity position, but there is one of the things is you can't personally guarantee the loan. The IRS does not allow personal guarantees, to your IRA. But the downside of borrowing money with your IRA is that it can be taxed. The income can be taxed. And typically we have these IRAs because we want to avoid tax, right? So say for example, you've got a property, it's 50% leveraged. So your rent check comes in, 50% of the proceeds can be subject to this UDFI tax, which right now is at the estate tax rate of something like 35%. So what you want to do is before you have your IRA borrow money, you want to talk to your tax professional, and you want to pencil it out because you can still take some deductions. You want to get some proper tax advice and find out if you're still going to make a decent return given that you've got this UDFI tax to deal with. So always begin with the end in mind. Always get some great tax and legal advice. Now, there's one other time that your IRA can be taxed, and that's if the IRA is seen to be running a business that has nothing to do with being a retirement account. Like maybe your IRA. Well, in the case of real estate, it would be fixing and flipping. So if you're going to fix and flip more than 3 properties a year in your IRA, the IRS might consider that you're running a business in your IRA and charge you this kind of UBIT tax. So it doesn't mean that you can't fix and flip. It just means you need to open more IRAs because the IRS does not limit how many IRAs you can have. So that's a good thing. So read more about this. I mean, if this piques your curiosity, read more about it. Go to irs.gov and look up publication 598, and it's going to tell you about these 2 kinds of taxes. And when you go to report them, when your CPA goes to write up your taxes, they're going to report these taxes on what's called a Form 990T. All right, so getting real estate into an IRA, how do you do that? Well, it never fails that almost weekly I get a call where somebody will say, oh, I'm so excited, I just found a house and I want to put it under contract. Let me open an IRA right now. So, well, I mean, that's good, except you probably should have done it 2 weeks ago, because when you open an IRA, we open it right away for you. But what you have to do is wait for your current custodian to send the money from where it is now into your self-directed IRA. That process can take a couple weeks. So if you haven't opened and funded an IRA yet and you go shopping for real estate, you're not going to have the money in your account for that earnest money deposit to make the deal happen. So do yourself a favor. Open the account first, get it funded, then shop for a property. Remember, the IRA is the buyer and not you. So you don't sign the contract. Your personal name doesn't go on it. The custodian signs the offer to purchase. So what you do is you give us the offer to purchase along with a direction letter, and you tell us what you need. You need earnest money, you need things, you tell us what you need, and then we'll wire funds to closing. You fund, you record, you get your keys, your tenants move in, and then rent checks are made payable to custodian for the benefit of your IRA. All right, so now let's just think about how much room you have to write on a check. And if you have to write the name of the custodian for the benefit of, say, Terry Yuede's IRA, that's a lot. So one thing you might want to do, if you're going to do it this way, is get a rubber stamp for your tenants so they can just stamp their check. That would be nice.
Nice. Good idea.
Another, yeah, you know, and just a courtesy, and it costs $5, so it doesn't really, you know, put you out too much or whatever, or $10 or something.
You want to make it as easy as possible for those tenants to give you those rents, right?
You do. Well, here's a way to make it even easier on your tenants and yourself, and that is to hire a property manager, because when it's your self-directed IRA, you're not going to be managing the property. What you can do is you're allowed to screen tenants, you're allowed to physically pick up and collect the rent checks, and you're allowed to hire third-party vendors. But other than that, you can't be the property manager. So if you hire a property manager, it can help you in a lot of ways, and here's the way. Number one, your tenants can write their check payable to the property manager, and then it's none of their business if your IRA owns the property or not. They don't need to know your business. So that it gives you some privacy. Also, because remember how you're not allowed to do any work on your own property? Well, what if your IRA owns a house and it's 3 a.m. on a Saturday and your water heater bursts? What are you going to do? Well, you can't go in and fix that, can you? But if you have a property manager, they can, and they can bill the IRA and pay you back. Because what you can't do is run out to Home Depot that night with your own money, buy the hot water heater and install it, because guess what? You just made an unauthorized contribution to your IRA. So you don't want to do that. You want to have your property manager, you know, handle that and pay it back. That's one really good way. The other way to handle it, the third way, is with a checkbook IRA, which we'll discuss in a moment. All right, so here's an example. We've got this happy father and son here. You know, they're serious investors, and they are going to buy a house together. They're very excited about it. You can tell. See the enthusiasm?
They look happy.
Yeah, they do, don't they? So they're going to, so Dad's got cash because he's been a good investor all his life. Son's got his IRA. He's been saving. Here's how the title reads. Custodian for the benefit of the son's IRA, 50% owner. Dad, 50% owner, tenants in common. That's how it reads. Now, wait a minute, you're saying, Kaaren, you just said that lineal ascendants and descendants are disqualified, and they are. But this is the exception. Before the deal, the father had no ownership interest in the property. The son had no ownership interest in the property, and it's because it's a new deal that this disqualified person rule doesn't come into effect. It's only after the deal that disqualified person rule takes effect. So neither the father nor the son are ever going to live in the property. No one who's disqualified to either of them will ever live in the property either. They're ascendants and descendants. So after the deal, they can never buy each other out. And all expenses and all proceeds are split, in this case 50-50, because that's how they record it. So the closing costs are paid 50-50. Now just keep in mind, too, that any expenses of the IRA are paid for by the IRA. So closing costs, property tax, rehab costs, any expense is paid for by the IRA. So in this case, where it's a partnership, 50-50, they're going to split everything. Earnest money, they're going to split earnest money 50-50. Everything is going to be 50-50 from the get-go, okay? So there we go. Now, with real estate, you know, Keith and Terry, I know you guys certainly have paid your dues in real estate. Have you ever seen a house that didn't need anything done to it?
No.
It doesn't exist, does it?
Yeah, I think they're out there, but we don't see too many of them.
Yeah, I mean, it's so rare, because even if it doesn't need something today, it's going to tomorrow. A house is like a living thing. It's constantly, things are breaking down. You have to repair them all the time, especially where you've got, weather and so forth. So what if your IRA depletes its reserves? Because all expenses of the IRA have to be paid for by the IRA. So that hot water heater, your IRA pays for that. Maybe you need a new roof. Your IRA needs to pay for that if your IRA owns the asset. So if the IRA is out of money and you have a tax bill coming up, what are you going to do? Here are 6 things. Number 1, make your annual contribution. So depending on what kind of account you have, like if you have a traditional or a Roth, you can contribute $5,000 if you're under 50, $6,000 if you're 50 or over. So the first thing you might want to do is just write a check, put it into your IRA, and use those funds to pay that tax bill. Now maybe, it's Christmas time or something and you don't have an extra $5, $6 in your checking account. You can liquidate other assets in your IRA. Maybe your self-directed IRA has this house, but it also has some gold bullion. So perhaps you could sell some of the gold and take the proceeds and use it to pay the tax bill. The third way is to transfer money from another retirement account. Maybe you have one that still has stocks, bonds, and mutual funds over across the street. What you can do is sell some of those equities and take that money and transfer it over into this self-directed IRA and use that money for the tax bill. If those things don't work, you could bring on a partner as long as they're not disqualified. Your IRA can always borrow money. It has to be non-recourse. Now, an institution isn't going to make this loan. It probably would be from an individual. But your IRA could borrow the money. And if all else fails, you could just sell the asset. So that's what you do if you run out of money in an IRA. Now, I've been promising to tell you about the checkbook IRA, and here we go. What this really is an IRA-owned LLC. And there are a lot of misconceptions about this. A lot of people will say, okay, Kaaren, I'm so excited. I just opened my IRA. When do I get my checkbook? It's like it doesn't work that way. This is what it is. Your IRA, your self-directed IRA, is open and funded. And now what happens is that you have an attorney draw up a special purpose LLC. Your IRA pays the attorney their attorney's fees, because remember, the IRA pays all the expenses. And then once the LLC is drawn up and opens a checking account, your IRA, you send us a direction letter, and we send the money from the IRA into the checking account of the LLC. So the IRA now owns an LLC, and the LLC has the money. Well, guess who's the managing member of that LLC? You are. You can be the managing member of your own LLC. Now you have checkbook control. Now your tenants can make their rent checks payable to your LLC. Maybe you named it Moon and Stars LLC. That's who they write their rent check to. Maybe that water heater bursts at 3 a.m. Well, you still can't do the work yourself, but you can just rip off a check, to the Home Depot, or call them with your debit card number, and have your property manager go pick it up and install it, or what the third-party vendor. But this is something that gives you a lot of freedom, especially if you have rental property. And earlier, you guys were asking me about asset protection. Well, LLCs come with asset protection. So talk to your attorney about what asset protection that it does provide for you in your particular state. But that's a great way to get asset protection and access to your IRA funds. Okay. Okay. So what kinds of plans can be self-directed? And again, lots of misunderstanding about this. But the IRA, it's not just a self-directed IRA. You can self-direct any of these. You can self-direct a traditional, self-direct a Roth, a SEP, a simple, an inherited IRA that's not on this list. You can also self-direct a Coverdell, which is a savings account. It's called an ESA, or Education Savings Account for kids. You can self-direct a health savings account. Now, with these qualified plans, we don't offer them, except we do offer the individual K. These are the 4 plans at the top, the 401, the 457, the 403, the defined benefit, and the profit sharing. Those are all ERISA plans that we don't offer at uDirect, but we do offer the individual K. It's got a lot of bang for the buck. So those are the plans that can be self-directed, not just the traditional IRA. So how do you do this? I mean, how do you self-direct? It's a 3-step process. You open the account, you get it funded, and then you invest. So you open an account by filling out an application. You fund your account in one of 3 ways. You write a check, you transfer an IRA, or you roll over an employer plan. And once you've done that and the money's in there, you tell us what you want to invest in. You give us a direction letter and the supporting documentation. 24 to 48 hours later, we get the money out, and then now your IRA owns an asset, and you are a self-directed investor. That is how it works. So if you'd like more information on what I've gone through, or if you'd like to go over your particular situation, I'd be happy to talk to you, or if you want to email me. It's khall@uDirectIRA.com, and our toll-free number is 866-538-3539. And so with that, Terry and Keith, thanks so much, guys. It was so great meeting you, last month in St. Louis, and I really appreciate being able to be a guest on your webinar today. Thank you again.
We really appreciate you taking the time to share this information with us, Kaaren. This is really neat information for people that are thinking about how they're going to set up their retirement and how they can do it through real estate, which is something that's near and dear to our hearts for sure.
It's something. Investing in real estate for retirement is probably going to be something that's going to become more and more popular. It seems that some of the other vehicles for making money over the long haul maybe have diminished some since kind of the financial collapse. So if you're thinking about real estate, if you make sure that you're out there learning different ways to do it, getting tax advice by good people, building a good team like Kaaren mentioned is very, very important. You just want to make sure that you're doing it right, and obviously Terry and I were always committed to providing this type of information, helping our clients in order to make good decisions. So get a hold of Kaaren if you need her. Please contact Terry and I if you need anything. And other than that, thanks so much for listening. Everybody enjoy the holidays, and best of luck in 2012, right?
For sure. We'll look forward to more webinars and also podcasts coming next year, 2012. If you guys would want to listen to any of our podcasts or webinars that we made, you can go to the iTunes store and search Yuede Team. All of our stuff is available on the iTunes store and free to download if you'd like. So again, Merry Christmas to everybody. Happy New Year. Thanks so much for spending the time to listen to us, and thanks again, Kaaren, for sharing that information with us.
My pleasure. Thanks, guys.
Have a great night. Bye-bye.
Bye.
How many people we have up? 20.